Hello, and welcome back to Fusion Writing, where building character meets creating structure. Today is our map day, and that means we get to go a little deeper on our topic for this week, which is how to use the Zettelkasten for fiction writing. This is the second time we've explored this topic. We did so a couple of months ago, but this time we're going to dive a little more deeply into it, and you're going to actually see how our two systems are different and how they're similar, and how we incorporate each other's contributions into our systems. So without further ado, I'm going to send it on over to Victoria.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to this Zettelkasten exploration. I think this will be very helpful because it gives you a nice overview into two systems and two sets of thinking for how to solve the exact same problem, which is developing and tracking a body of writing. It could be nonfiction, it could be fiction, it doesn't matter. Everyone knows that my system evolved strictly for writing fiction. So what I'm sharing with you is a little bit of a piece out of, I don't know if you can see that. It is the Zettelkasten for Fiction manuscript book. Here it comes. This is the book I'm writing for you so that you can get your novel written. So in Part 1, I talk at length about how to set up your note box and what that could look like. So in my world, the first thing that I needed was I needed a way to track my story. So I took 24 plot points and plot beats, which is a traditional Western style conflict-driven narrative structure, and I lined those out onto a set of 24 cards. So this is just 24 placeholders that give me each of those plot beats on a tab. What I can then do, as you can see, is in here I have little cards inserted, just little bits of paper, post-it notes. Anytime I came up with an idea and I thought, oh, that could probably happen around the middle of the story, I would just drop a note card in the middle of those little placeholders to remind me that I think that scene or that chapter is going to need to go there. Well, the cool thing about the Zettelkasten system is once you have that card placed, then when you write the next scene or you're thinking about the next chapter, you can say, oh, if this one goes here and I know that action sequence, then the one I just wrote needs to go up here. It's going to have to come before that. And if it comes before that, then I'm setting something up that I can then reveal back over here. So that next scene's going to have to go back here. So what you're doing is you're giving yourself a guided set of cards that help you drop those scene and sequel ideas in as you write them and go through that process. It's just a nice, clean way of keeping track of your story bits until you get to the actual drafting. That's a whole nother system. We won't talk about that today. But that's how I use I call this my plot box, because when I'm working in it, I just grab one of my little mobile boxes. This is actually a lid to a file box. You could literally use anything. I drop those in there and then I can work with my story beats, file them away, and sequence things. So now let's move on to character. Because my Zettelkasten grew out of an existing story idea, it made sense to me to build out my box around my characters because I already knew them. Their voices were very clear in my head. Their characters were pretty well developed. So that made sense to me to hang the structure of book 1 on my characters. So that's what I did. So I follow the academic disciplines for the first 1 through 5,000s. My 6,000s are catch-all. My 7,000s are where this book lives, this novel. So it made sense to me to divide them up roughly in increments of 10. So my main female character, she gets 7110. That's Tara. And I like to mark my cards with color codes if you know anything about me. So she's got red and pink across the top of her cards. So when I'm looking in my box, I can easily see that's her. She's my main character. So in order to populate her world, then her parents, because she's 7110, her parents are 7111, A and B. So in that way, they're just the next number behind her. She's 7110, they're 7111. A is mom, B is dad. Easy peasy. So then the next major character that came in her world is her coworker and friend, Chad. Chad gets 7112 because he's the next most important person in her life behind her parents. So he got the 12. And he also gets a pink stripe across the top because he's a member of Tara's world. This color coding thing can be a real lifesaver when you're sequencing out chapters or you're working out how different characters are going to interact. If I know at a glance, okay, this character is pink designated and this one is blue, I know that one is from my female character's world and one's from my male character's world, and I can start playing those off of each other. So it's just another visual cue that I use in my cards. So we know Chad is 7112. So then let's jump to my main male character. Since he's the next major piece of my story universe, he gets 7120 and he gets a blue stripe, which tells me if it's a blue stripe, it's part of his world. So she's 7110, he's 7120. And then all of their people get populated in between there. So 7120 A and B, who might that be? It's his parents. So I kept the same format and I just dropped those corresponding people in following the system that I laid out using Tara. So that's an easy way to talk to yourself as you're building characters. Develop that first one really well. I use A through N as in Nancy. So almost the full alphabet, well, half the alphabet of note cards to develop out characters. So /A has this information, /B goes next, /C. I have A through N for all of my main characters. Everything about their personality and their life goes in those cards. So once you line out that first major character, then your system builds itself. Because in order to populate the rest of the characters, you just keep following that same system that you did the first time. If you make mistakes, don't worry about it. The cool thing is the system is very forgiving. You can always add a /A or a /1 or whatever makes sense to you in order to tuck a card in between things that it needs to go in between. Very simple. Don't overcomplicate it. The final piece that I wanted to bring to your attention is how I populated my main bad guy. I had trouble with this because Tara's 7110, my main male is 7120. I'm thinking, well, where do I put my bad guys? Well, he's the next major important person, so to speak, so I made him 7130. Easy peasy. So as I continue populating the world, I just keep moving in increments of 10. If I need to break it down into the 50s or break those numbers up, I sure can. The cool thing about numbers is they go on forever. So if you look at how Kathleen is going to walk you through her system, our systems line up very nicely. In her worksheet, she's breaking down for you in a very simple but systematic way how the systems interface. But the important piece to take away from that is how you set up your system needs to make sense to you. So the numbers aren't the most important thing. The structure is. Just start building out that first character if you're coming from a character perspective like I did, and let that first character guide you through creating the rest of them, and then use your plot box or your plot points, if that makes sense to you, in order to start sequencing those scenes and sequels so that your story starts to make sense and come together in some kind of an order at the same time that your character cards are coming together and getting put in order. In that way, you can always find your way back to your thought train, and that is harnessing the power of the Zettelkasten. Being able to keep those things at hand and find your way back to those ideas so that you can pick up that writing when you need to. If you do it and you stick with it, it won't fail you. So with that, I'm going to throw the ball over to Kathleen to take you through her side of the house.
Thank you, Victoria. Boy, that was interesting. I can't wait to see your handout of the categories that you use. I know I loved it when you showed us all of the cards that you used to help develop your characters, everything to who was their best friend in high school. Just amazing, the character development cards that you developed, and yet so different from my style of character development, and how amazing the two went together. So that's what I want to share with you, is where my system comes from. And you can use it as a model, and Victoria's as the other model, and understand from that you're free to structure your world any way you want, you've got two different examples, and you know that you will be able to fit everything in that you want to fit. So here's just example number 2. So I'm going to share my screen because I'm going to be specific about certain numbers. Okay, so here is my map of how I do my characters. This is actually the handout that you will get over in LiLLiPub with the map lesson. So be sure go over there and pick it up. So all of my writing goes into the 4,000 region. I use the 4100s and the 4200s for my personal writing. That's just reflections and things like that. I began my fiction writing in the 4300s, and my 4300 area is all just pieces, bits and pieces, scenes, scenery, ideas for characters, ideas for stories, ideas for reasons why I might want to write a story. They just populate this 4300 area. This whole area is like a little dump box. I can just drop ideas in those sections. I have dividers for them, and I can just plunk ideas in when they occur to me. I get serious at the 4400s. That would be my first project. And this is akin more to Victoria's novel. At 4500, that would be my second project. And I just keep going, 46, 47. If I get past 49, if I get super prolific, I'll just make it 4A and keep on going with the letters of the alphabet. So this will accommodate any number of works, fiction or nonfiction, that I create. So here's the model for each one of my projects. My 4410 areas, my characters. I will go more deeply into it in the second page, but I just number my characters using topics. And so I just have an area that's 4310.01 is going to be my first character, 0.02 is my second character, and so on. I don't have the interesting idea of having the characters that are related to a given character as a breakdown. I think that's a lovely addition of Victoria's. You could probably arrange it to work for yours. If you think about it, make your first character 0.10 and their sub-characters 0.11, and you could have the same thing that Victoria does. I think I probably didn't think of that because mine is a family story, and so two of my key players are a mother and her son. In fact, the son is the key character in the story, and the grandfather is one of the most important characters. So is that grandfather belong to the son or to the mother? It belongs to both of them, and that's probably why it didn't occur to me to structure things the way Victoria did. But in another story where the characters have separate worlds, that is something I will probably adopt. I'll probably have a character 0.10 instead of a character 01. That's the kind of thing you can do. And I will show you more about what I keep for each character on the next page. 42 and 4300, that's like my story Bible. That's where I capture information about the locations, history, backstory. One of my characters, her car turns out to be rather important. It's not a brand new car. It's kind of on the old side. Her husband's a retired college professor, so they never had much money. But it's going on the road trip with a group of friends because it's got a huge trunk, and they can put all of their stuff in the trunk. Problem is, when they get stuck on a narrow road and have to turn around, that big car is a definite handicap, and they're risking their lives having that car. But that's part of the history and the backstory. So then 4400 for me is my motivation. What keeps me going with this story? Why am I writing it? Why do I think it's so much fun? Why do I want to share it with the world? So that's private to me. But if I get stuck and I'm like, oh, I can read that and say, I can figure this out. I really want to get my story done. 4550 is my story arc, and I did not have that area particularly well developed, probably because I was creating this for another person, and I came about after using it. But this was the perfect spot for me to install Victoria's plot beats. She has plot beats 1 through 24, So now I've got 4550.01, 0.02, all the way up to 0.24, and her plot beats fit right in. And those dividers, I can pull them out and put them in a workbox and throw things into them just like she does. It fits in perfectly. So now let's take a look at the second page, which is how I break up my characters, and I go a little bit more fine grain. So as I said, my first character is 4410.01. And so I always keep a character profile diagram for every one of my characters because, as you know, building character is the heart of my writing. And so 0.02 is the memory prompt list, which are the little tiny vignettes that go with each of the character profiles, character traits that I've assigned to my character. So where do I put Victoria's marvelous character development cards? The fantastic cards she has about her character's world. Well, they go right in at 4410.01.3. And I've got 3A, 3B, 3N, 3O. I could go on. If she adds 6 more cards, I can fit them all in. I don't know what she's going to do when she gets past C, but hey, I'll wait and see. So that's my look at characters and how I arrange my box. So when you compare my handout and Victoria's handout over there in LiLLiPub, you will have probably enough to give you a 3D view of the possibilities for how you might want to structure your box. And always remember, if you need that workbox, you can always pull something randomly out of your Zettelkasten, plunk it into your box and work from it. Heaven knows I do all the time. This is my workbox. So with that, I'll turn it over to Victoria for final words.
Holy cow, that is awesome. That's so amazing. It's so funny how in Kathleen's world, because she wasn't working on a specific book project necessarily at the time, she has already incorporated places for things like ideas for scenes, ideas for setting. What she's doing is she's collecting that rough draft, that pre-writing process in her box for safekeeping. I have those sections as well. So most of the workflow, the kinds of things that you need to write a story, they're all the same. We're all hunting for the same information. The key piece is getting it organized into an order with a good index so that you can get back to those ideas when you need them. So as you're looking at the two systems together, start to think about what is your idea for your story and how fleshed out is it? And then start to consider, what do I want that organization to look like? And just start putting the cards in the box. Start moving those things around. The more that you move them and see them against and with each other, the more ideas that you get and the better footing you have for the whole writing process. So as always, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you sharing this piece of time with us. Come on over to LiLLiPub.org and join us where we meet up and talk further about not only these ideas, but the projects that we're working on. We workshop and share ideas. It's an amazing resource where right now you pretty much get us to yourselves because we stay pretty dialed in over there. So definitely come check it out and join us, and we will see you next time.
Thank you, Victoria. Yes, LiLLiPub.org is where you want to be. That's where you can pick up your handouts. That's where you can join the discussion. And that's where you can join our weekly Zoom calls. You can post your writing. We'll workshop it with you. We have an awful lot of fun over there. LiLLiPub.org. And in the meantime, we'll see you next week for a whole new writing adventure. Bye-bye.
Thank you.